Anxiety. It is, I mean, we talk about epidemics. This is the one that is by far, in a way, number one in our society. The first thing that I would speak to around anxiety is it doesn't exist. Now, I'm not saying that it's not real. What I'm saying is the word anxiety is not a human experience. The word anxiety is a clinical term. It's not a thing that happens in humans. What happens in humans is what matters. So we've become so adept, and it's become such a part of our culture, of our language, that we just say, I'm anxious. And that's where the problem starts. How can we possibly solve a riddle that doesn't exist in us? So what is it? Am I afraid? Am I hypervigilant? Am I nervous? Is it in my body? Do I feel agitation, physical agitation? Is it in my mind? Racing, talking. Am I thinking about the same thing all the time, or am I thinking about different things? There's all of these things that are the human experience that's underneath the term anxiety. There are lots of different ways of approaching and trying to solve the riddles that show up as what we call anxiety, from therapies to medications. But they would all be much more effective if we first got more familiar with the landscape underneath. What's happening with me? Now, I also would love to suggest to try to apply the notion of curiosity to see where it takes you. Compelling information out there that links some of these states to genetic manifestations, things that are inherited through our lineage. Good to know. Certainly, there's epigenetic, generational factors, non-controversial, it can be there. We see it in different groups. Good to know. What does that mean to each individual is really important. Taking the time, getting curious about what it means to be us. What does it mean to be the child of our parent or parents? And what did it mean for them to be the children of their parent or parents? What is it that we've experienced in this world, and what message has it sent us? I'm somebody who was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I am somebody who is generally paying attention to a lot more stuff that can seem, and I can be quite nervous. I know that at least some of that has to do with my experience as an immigrant, just as a small snapshot. I happen to be an immigrant from Iran, at the time of the revolution, where there was a massive conflict. I'd been to America before, and I'd met some of the American kids before. None of them got maps out, show me their parents. Look at this cool foreigner that's here. Let's show him a map, and he could tell us where he's from, right? And they couldn't pronounce my name. But then suddenly, a few years later, when I'm back as an immigrant, I'm now the object of anger and violence, getting beat up, name calling, nervous. Where's the pain coming? Am I suggesting that the entirety of my experience is based on that? No, that's not what I'm suggesting. But I am suggesting that that was an important element. And if I can begin to get more curious about all of the elements, if you get more curious about what does it mean to be you, you might be able to identify riddles and maybe solve some of those riddles that maybe bring down the level of fear, improve the level of safety, and maybe even take the collection of all that there is and it just drops down below that threshold that we have that makes you diagnosable with a disorder. It happens. And sometimes it's good to take medications to help, because the stuff that's happening in us is really difficult and pervasive. Great. Great, they're there. Sometimes it helps to be in therapies too. Great. Can't always solve all of the riddles of what it means to be us, but we certainly can begin to think of ourselves differently. Not broken, not disordered, but just ordered. Maybe reordered based on our experiences. And to go one step farther, for anybody who's dealing with, or for somebody that's watching this and comes into contact with your anxiety, there are lots of tips and tools and ways to help mitigate the consequence of that in that moment. From breathing exercises to cognitive exercises, identifying loops of what you're saying to yourself, to movement exercises, to medications or psychedelics. There's a lot of different entries that are all valid. They are evidence-based. They have been demonstrated by folks that are curious and who know how to test these kinds of things to be helpful. But none of them work all the time, and none of them work for everybody. So the recommendation is to begin to experiment, to see what works for you. There's going to be something. Any good scientist will tell you that when you run an experiment, it's just as important to learn that something doesn't work as it is to find something that does work. So when you run experiments for you, it's not a failure because something didn't work. It's a success that this isn't for me, so let me try something else because I think we're worth it.